Hi students! Last week we left off with early Christianity and the development of the Christian world in Europe. This week we'll be talking about Romanesque art. Romanesque is a period that falls into the Middle Ages. The Middle Ages being a period of European history that falls between the fall of the Roman Empire in about the 5th century to the fall of Constantinople in 1453. The height of the Middle Ages happening from about 1100 to 1453. The Romanesque specifically was characterized by stability and prosperity of the church being the co-regent, the co-ruler to our emperors during this period of time. This period of stability led to a great building period. So we have many cathedrals and church monasteries coming on the scene. This surplus of time and financial stability leads to leisure. We often see that throughout history. And in this case, this leisure time led to something called a pilgrimage. A pilgrimage is a journey to a sacred place for religious reasons. And often these pilgrimage routes would lead people from cathedral to cathedral to cathedral over the span of Europe. What these people were doing were walking in penance, walking in their faith, so often carrying very little. Sometimes we would see just these little leather satchels just with the basics necessary. And what they were seeking was to be in the presence of holy objects and holy sites. They often came in the form of something called a relic, which was housed in something called a reliquary. A relic is a piece or a part of a deceased person's body or belonging that is kept as a holy object of reverence. So for example, we talked last week about the stable triptych. That stable triptych contained pieces of the one true cross and a nail from the cross, and it is thought that these holy objects can heal people or bring clarity when there's decisions that need to be made, or can help be a vessel for a prayer that needs to be brought up to heaven. These relics, these objects of holy significance, are housed in something called a reliquary, so a container for holy relics. And they can look very differently depending on what they are. Sometimes they are just little flat discs that are set into an altar. Sometimes they are something as extravagant as the stable triptych that we looked at. Or you'll shortly see the reliquary of Saint Foy. The dominant social system in medieval Europe was something called feudalism. This idea was that nobility held lands gifted from the crown in exchange for military service. So the king technically owned all the land in a region. Vassals or local lords were tenants to these nobles, and peasants were obliged to live on their lord's land, paying him homage in the forms of things like labor, a share in their produce, and that was all in exchange for military protection, whether they wanted it or not. I want to also briefly mention, just to continue to set the stage for this world we are stepping into here, the idea of the Holy Crusade. These were military expeditions from Western Christendom under the Holy Cross in order to recapture holy places from the Muslims. And you can see that there were 4 major campaigns of this, the first 2 falling within this period of time that we'll be talking about today. So starting with Saint Foy in Conques, this is the earliest surviving pilgrimage church. It was dedicated to Saint Foy. She was a virgin martyred as a child in 303 because she wouldn't worship pagan gods. Here is her reliquary statue, gold and gemstones over a wooden core. The relics were stolen from elsewhere and brought to this church. We are looking down the center nave of Saint Foy Cathedral. The cathedral itself was meant to accommodate large crowds and is one of the oldest, if not the oldest, pilgrimage church still standing. There were side aisles that allowed for ambulatory access surrounding that center aisle, so even if there was a service going on, new pilgrims arriving would be able to still experience the church without disrupting what was happening in the central areas. There was a wooden roof originally that was replaced by stone barrel vaulting, which lessened the fire risk and also improved acoustics. You can see, as typical with Romanesque cathedrals, it's very dense and heavy, solid, stalwart. It's immovable, but it still has a lightness and airiness because of the height that they are able to accomplish with the increase in building technology. Here we are looking at the west entrance of St. Foy. And if you look down low here, I'm going to just circle this for you, there is an entranceway that's a little different than anything we've seen on a cathedral or church before. This is called a portal entrance, and this is meant to be something that leaves a deep impression upon you when you enter the church. They are filled in the upper areas of this entrance, in the area called the tympanum, with relief sculpture. And this relief sculpture is typically of some sort of didactic or teaching method. Here is the relief sculpture in the tympanum from St. Foy Cathedral. This is an image of the Last Judgment. So the moment where all souls are sorted, good souls, bad souls, what they have done, their deeds are decided in where they will spend the rest of their life. Christ is in the center in a mandorla or a full body halo. Angels are holding scrolls that form arches surrounding him. And the figures on the right are saints and churchmen. When we look below Christ's feet, we see the damned souls falling and being tortured by demons and devils. The prideful knight tumbling from a horse, speared by the devil. A lustful woman yoked to the neck of her lover. Satan forcing, or Satan's minions forcing, molten metal through the throat of a forger. These images are meant to frighten people into doing the right thing. As in Evolution of the Christian Cathedral, here we can see that even the voussoirs are highly ornamented. In the center we have Christ, and surrounding him all these archways display incredibly ornate carvings and relief sculpture. So here we can see Christ in the center. He is in the hint of a mandorla. We're not able to see the entire thing, but we're shown that he has this giant halo behind him. He has the Greek cross behind his head. Remember, that harkens back to the symbols of Apollo, the sun god, those original cross between pagan and Christian imagery. He's surrounded on four sides by the symbols of the four evangelists. Matthew showing himself as a winged man, Mark the winged lion, Luke the winged ox, and John the eagle. Beneath and flanking Christ and the evangelists are the 24 elders focusing on Christ. You can see the zigzag shapes of their bodies as they turn and twist to get just a glimpse of Christ up above them. Surrounding them, the floral motifs and rosettes. These 24 elders are a reference to the book of Revelation from the Christian Bible. And in it, St. John describes this scene. Before the throne there was a sea of glass, like unto crystal. Round about were four beasts full of eyes. The 24 elders fall down before him and worship him, what liveth forever and ever. When we look at the individual imagery of these elders, each one is as unique as the next, with different facial hair, different head pieces, some of them holding instruments, some not, incredibly elaborate and ornate dress and hair on them. This imagery was created by an artisan named Giselberto. I love that we have his name. This is the beginning of being able to recognize and see artists as individuals, artists as having their own legacy. In the center here we have a large and imposing Christ, a mandorla surrounded and supported by four angels. On the right hand of Christ, as we've seen over and over again, we have the saved, and on the left hand of Christ we have the damned. Archangel, if you look towards that main bottom right side register, Archangel Michael bends, weighing the souls. The damned souls weigh less. They have further to fall to hell, and they have less substance in their being. zooming in on that, there's Archangel Michael, and then to his right is the devil, or again on the further left hand of God. This reminds me about Anubis weighing the souls, weighing the heart against the feather of Ma'at, of the dead, to decide what their fate is. And if we look further to the right, you can see demons torturing these beings that have been deemed to be not worthy. This bottom register piece shows people in procession marching towards their sorting, towards what their forever after will be. And you can see in the front of this image, the two characters leading, we are presuming that they are of good heart and good faith. They are carrying their pilgrimage bags, so we know that they have done their service and paid their penance in reference to their holy devotion.